Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. Even though more women were elected last year to public office, here in our so-called progressive New York, there are only 11 women out of 51 in the City Council, 19 out of 63 in the State Senate, 50 out of 150 in the Assembly, and 8 out of our 21-member delegation to Congress. Thankfully, people are working to change this. Marti Speranza Wong, the president of Amplify Her, is one of them, and she's my guest today. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on
Good.
your program.
You're not only the president, you were one of the founders.
That's right.
If not the founder.
There was a group of women that founded the organization.
Good. And you ran for public office.
Yes.
In the last city council election.
That's right.
I don't know how many candidates you were running against in the primary.
9 candidates.
9.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure your experiences from that election gave you a whole different perspective of A, running for office.
Yes. Absolutely.
And B, as a woman running for office,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So how did it do it? Tell me what.
Well, I've been involved in the community and been involved in a lot of local campaigns, so I did think I had some understanding about how it all works. But, when you're a candidate, you do, in a sense, see sort of the behind the scenes and how decisions are made and how oftentimes the establishment can miss an opportunity to bring more women into elected office. In our race, there were 5 women running, and many of them very accomplished, had been involved in their community and brought forth a lot of great ideas in terms of policy. And what we saw in that race, and it was reflected in other parts of the city as well, where the elected officials very much got behind the male candidate who was sort of the anointed one, making it very difficult for a woman to be in that seat.
Especially 5 women.
Yes.
If you had added up all the 5 women's votes, would one of you have won?
Yes, if all 5 had been added, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you were really kind of shocked?
I guess so. I mean, it was an education. It was an understanding of how these things work. I may have gone in somewhat naive about the process, thinking, it is all about who, works the hardest, knocks on the most doors, has the policy, and voters decide. I think that was for me the biggest sort of epiphany is, in a campaign that was well over a year long, I got a call from 4 different elected officials on the same afternoon of the same day saying that there would be an endorsement of the candidate who ultimately did win. And it felt, as a woman, that there was a conversation that had been had among a group of all white men to endorse the white man. And so all of the everyone likes to say they support women. We're all Democrats. This was a primary. And of course, these are all elected officials who are progressive. And yet it felt, as a candidate, that the decision needed to be made before the polls were open. And in discussing my own experiences with other women that were running in other parts of the city, or even those that were in our field, this was a sentiment that was shared broadly, that there's a big disconnect between what is said in terms of what we as Democrats believe in and sort of what happens in practice. So, having come out of that experience, seeing that, at this point in time, we have no women in citywide elected office here in New York. We have a speaker, a mayor, a controller, and public advocate who are all men. And our city council is 80% men. I'm, wondering, why is this the case? This is, a true blue city. We're progressive. I I think the conventional wisdom was for some period of time that women were not heeding the call. Women weren't stepping up to run, that we needed inspiration to run, that we need training. And there's a lot of great organizations providing those things. But I think there was also an unmet need, which is that when women do step up to the plate and they have the skills and they have the campaign structure, what is preventing them from getting over the finish line, as we see cycle after cycle? And that was an issue that this group of women that came together very informally, and then we decided we want to do something about this. And that ultimately led to the foundation of Amplify Her.
I was thinking that back in early 60s, we were going to run a primary that was all the West Side Reform clubs. And there were still regular clubs that we were running against. We were going to run a primary against the incumbent city council member, but there were so many candidates that we invented this pre-primary procedure to come up with one Democratic candidate. And I don't think we had those kind of primaries, the direct vote primaries, I don't know. But anyway, I helped the only woman running. And it was so interesting. The men were talking about esoteric things. I remember one wanted to build a swimming pool in the Hudson River. Estelle Karpf, who was my candidate, was a district leader. She worked in labor negotiations in the city. She was very strong and very smart. And she talked about the tax benefits that Macy's was getting. And she got no traction at all with women or men. It was really, well, she was talking about really basic issues and nobody paid attention. So
it's interesting. I mean, we see that right in the presidential campaigns now, how women often struggle to get the same sort of attention from media, even from voters. I sort of get the other feeling that some of my friends are saying, well, how can you not support a woman? Right.
It's so funny. We're in a very changing time, don't you think?
I do think that is absolutely the case. In fact, in New York City, I feel the last year we've seen a change happen. And, we've, as an organization, Amplify Her has been around for a year. We're very new, but in that period of time, what you've seen happen, and our first slate of endorsed candidates, we're working with all women going against incumbents. That was, and yes, they're all sort of long shot candidates, or it seemed at the time. Women that were stepping up to the IDC. I remember
State Senate.
Right. Yeah. I remember sitting down with Alessandra Biaggi before she was a candidate, and hearing her talk about the vision she had for her district and how there was this possibility of running and encouraging her, thinking this is exactly the kind of...
She ran against the leader of the IDC, the Independent Democratic Caucus, which voted for with the Republicans.
Right. So for people that don't know, there was this sort of breakaway group of Democrats that were elected as Democrats, caucused with Republicans, and I think voters weren't necessarily aware of that. And this is something, sort of a broader issue, right? We want to think, if someone's a Democrat, then they're good. And we haven't always had the nuance in our primary process to say, no, there's actually a range of Democrats. You have those that are coming out of sort of an establishment, a machine, and those that are, coming from being community leaders, being organizers, who are coming in with very different intentions and very different policy ideas. So, the participation in the Democratic primary is so essential. And that's what we saw, last year, was that people did pay attention. They did educate themselves about the difference. And you saw, from now Senator Jessica Ramos.
From where?
In Queens. Catalina Cruz, our assembly member, the first Dreamer serving in Albany. Alessandra Biaggi, who's now serving in the state Senate. These were women we believed in, campaigns that we got behind. What we as an organization do is we come in with boots on the ground. We've seen time and time again, and at least over the last year, that people power is greater than and more compelling than money. All of these incumbents had the name recognition, they had the big donors. And obviously everyone points to AOC's race, but this is sort of a inflection point. I think there's so much changing now in New York where what was thought was impossible is now doable. And I think what we're going to see is more women with that knowledge stepping up to the plate and saying, you know, I can make a difference. I'm going to put myself out there.
And they're not coming necessarily from the local Democratic club.
Absolutely.
They're just coming from outside. And it's like they're cutting into that stream, right?
Absolutely.
It was terrific, yeah.
I mean, what we saw, for example, in City Council District 45, which I want to mention because there's a special election happening in 2 weeks.
And where is that?
This is in Brooklyn. It's in the neighborhoods Flatbush, East Flatbush, Canarsie. It is Jumaane Williams' old council district.
And he's now the public advocate. Yeah.
So when he won public advocate in that special election earlier this year, there's this whole ripple effect. His seat is now vacant. And there are a number of women who've stepped up. Our organization has endorsed Monique Chandler Waterman. She's a community organizer. She started a nonprofit called East Flatbush Village and has worked with her community. And because she's done that work, she really knows how to best serve her community. She's brought into this really from a sense of trying to improve the lives of people in her neighborhood. And there's a number of strong women running for that seat, which is amazing to see. We were particularly excited about her and the vision she had for District 45. But, you know, this is a special election in May. People aren't necessarily paying attention to, but it's very important.
How many people do you think you reach? What are your troops?
Yeah.
And how do you get them?
So we rely a lot on social media, believe it or not. There are, and I think we can attribute this in part to Trump and, you know, the state of where our country is right now.
Right, I think that's a big influence.
It is. People who maybe normally weren't paying attention to local politics are realizing, wow, there's a lot of things going on in this country that I don't like, and things need to change. And yes, you can have a very big impact at a local level. And young people are so savvy. I'm always blown away in terms of where people are. Even young people who can't yet vote are out there and they're volunteering, they're phone banking, they're knocking on doors, they're spreading word to their networks over social media. So, you know, it's really wonderful to see that sort of activism at a local level. And Amplify Her is New York City focused, but I think this is happening across the country.
But it's New York City candidate focus.
That's correct.
Not office.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So
and if you look online on your website, you've got it. There are borough coordinators. Sometimes there are 2 borough coordinators.
Yes.
And you've just built a whole big organization.
Well, you know, it's been really thrilling to see because, of course, when we sat down at the beginning, it was an idea and it was, you know, vague, and we knew we wanted to do what we could to make a difference. And I think what has been such a great validation is that as we spread word and we're constantly in the streets across the city, there are so many other people who share this, you know, vision and real desire to see things change at a local level, and not just women, men too, everyone kind of saying, you know, this is important. We do a lot of education. People don't necessarily realize.
City council, yeah.
You know, I mean, when we say, you know, did you know your city council is 80% male? It's like, what, huh? You know, because we'd like to imagine it's more reflective of New Yorkers. I mean, women are 52% of the population. We're a larger percent of voters. And yet that isn't what's the case, that we see this at a local level.
I'm so fascinated. How did this little group get together? I mean, how can people who want to do the same thing start something?
Yeah.
So who did you include?
Yeah, so there were a number of women that I knew through my own campaign. Others that had been running in other parts of the city that I got to know because we were sort of going through a parallel experience. Marjorie Velasquez running her campaign in the Bronx is an example. And, we got together and we really started to think about, what are the issues and how can we do something about it? You mentioned the borough directors. Everyone involved in our organization, we're 100% volunteer organization. So when people step up and give their time, it's because they believe in the mission very passionately, and people give their talents. I mean, we have attorneys and graphic designers and organizers and all kinds of people that are coming in and saying, I care about this and I want to contribute. So that's how we've been able to spread word and get people involved. Our borough directors, again, are volunteers, but they take up a lot of their time, an immense amount of time and energy and talent that they dedicate to this effort. So it's been really great to see that happen in such an organic way, because we didn't sit down and come up with a business plan. I mean, we had conversations, and the conversations turned into sort of our to-do list. And as we rolled out, more people got involved and shaped the organization. And now, even though we're citywide, having teams within each borough really on the pulse of what's happening in their particular community is really important.
I mean, suppose if somebody wants to help.
Yes.
What do they do?
They should reach out to us. We have a website, amplifyher.nyc. We have meetings across the city, so each borough has a meeting every month or every other month.
And our people can go to that meeting?
Everything we
I
do
didn't
is
get
open.
That impression. All right.
Oh no, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, we just hosted, for example, in Brooklyn, in preparation for this special election, we hosted a forum and everyone was invited, and it was a free event. And basically, we wanted people from the community to come in and hear from all of the women running. There are 5 really extraordinary women that are in this race, and so. Yes, it's really about bringing as many people into the fold and giving them information so that they can help. They don't have to necessarily support who we as an organization endorse, but we're a very democratic group, so everyone who volunteers 15 hours becomes a voting member. So if you get out there and you're door knocking and you're helping, a woman get over the finish line, then you're,
15
helping
hours over a stretch of time.
Per year. So it's actually...
It's not such a big
it's
commitment.
not a heavy lift,
no.
but, we wanted to make sure, that it was an organization with
the body that can vote.
Right, and that everyone and anyone can be involved and can have that seat at a table.
So let's talk about some of the issues, and I think you're right. I think the biggest catalyst to electing more women has been Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
He's inspired
That's
people.
irony.
Is it because he wasn't in politics or he was a businessman? You think he can do it, I can do it? I don't know. But I think it's what he stands for, right?
I think that's it.
And do you think the women they have a larger agenda than we used to have, right? I mean, they're talking about the whole range of policies.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not, we really haven't seen women running on the platform of I'm a woman. And, as an organization, we don't endorse someone because they're a woman. We have a very comprehensive, actually some of the candidates have come back to us and said, your questionnaire is more intense and more detailed than anyone's. But the point being that we're about, what these candidates represent, what they can get done, the experience they're bringing in. We haven't weighed in on all races. We don't have the bandwidth to, and also we need to be focused about really getting behind women that we're 110% with. So it's not just that. I mean, we actually had some races where, a woman would be running against another woman, and the other woman, for an example, in a race we got involved in Staten Island, the IDC member was a female,
right.
And we were with the challenger. So that, is likely to happen.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to future elections? Is the organization
yes.
looking to help people who want to run next time?
Absolutely. I mean, we have obviously a lot ahead in 2020. You'll see all the state races, Assembly and Senate. And for the city, 2021 is going to be
enormous,
a
right?
massive year.
How many people are leaving the council? A third?
So it's more than that. It's 35 seats are term limited out. So essentially, we're going to have almost an entirely new council. All the citywides, as you know, are going to be up. So we're going to have a new mayor and controller and public advocate. So this is an immense opportunity, and it's something we in our organization think a lot about, because in a sense, I think of it as a report card for Amplify Her. We want to really be able to have the boots on the ground, the organization, the structure to make a difference in these races. And there are a lot of races and presumably a lot of great candidates that will be stepping up.
That's right, even more. So how did you get to be this kind of a person that's interested? Where did you come? Where do you come from originally? Where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in upstate New York.
I always am interested in how people develop this political interest and talent, I guess, really.
Is
your family political?
No, not political at all. I mean, I think in terms of, and I don't necessarily think that I've been a sort of a political person. I've been an activist. And I think the roots of that might have been, I went to a small all-girl Catholic school, and it was very much about women's empowerment. And so I took that into, my college experience. I led a chapter of NOW at my college and always just felt very strongly about women's empowerment, women's rights, and sort of the fight for equality. At a time, I graduated from college in '98, and that was when people didn't really want to identify as a feminist. I feel like it's this cycle where people did, and then it was not the cool thing to do, and people felt like that battle has been won. We're all equal. And now, again, going back to Trump, I think there is this acknowledgement that, wow, we have a misogynist in the White House, so clearly we have our work cut out for us. There's a lot more that we need to be doing, and this isn't the time to be complacent. We need to be in the streets, we need to be activists, and so I don't know, it's just been something that I've always...
And you're entrepreneurial also, aren't you?
Actually, before I ran for office, I was working for the city of New York, running a program called Women Entrepreneurs. And we worked with women primarily from underserved communities, so outer borough, immigrant, low-income women that were pursuing entrepreneurship more out of necessity, sometimes undocumented women who might not have had other employment options, cooking something in their home, selling it on the street. These were the types of small businesses that we were looking to assist.
I always have a general definition of political, which includes a strategist and advocate. So in a way, those are the talents: to be committed to something, to be a good strategist about how to get to what you want. That's what you're really talking about, right? And independent. I was thinking, because I always identify myself as a political person, but I don't know, in that strict political person, I'm not. I've never been part of an accepted part of a formal political establishment. Anyway, it's so interesting. So you find, you're really doing a lot now.
We're trying, we're working hard, and I think this is chapter one. I would love to see our organization grow. Hopefully your viewers will get involved, because it is a movement that's going to take really an effort from around the city. We have a great core of people, and we've been able to, I think, do a lot in our first year, but we certainly want to be growing to the extent that in 2021 and beyond, but that is going to be a very big year for New York City.
Do you find a lot of the women that you're working with are interested in seeing a woman be elected and are looking to women's campaigns, or are they just looking broadly to see who they should support generally?
I think I can't speak for all people involved in the organization, but I think there is this sense that we need to support women, and there, that's in large part why people, come to Amplify Her, is really wanting to help women who are out there.
And who you think should be elected.
Exactly.
It's not any woman.
It is not.
Let's always make that certain. There are women of quality and talent that far exceeds some of the male people they run against.
Absolutely.
And up until now have not been recognized, right?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So you're very optimistic.
I'm optimistic. I mean, I think, you know, I think I came out of my own experience a little jaded, thinking, you know, maybe things aren't quite what they appear. And, but now I'm seeing this shift, and it's very encouraging. Earlier this week, Senator Jessica Ramos came out and endorsed Tiffany Caban, who is running for Queens DA. And we have endorsed Tiffany Caban as well. And it was just so inspiring and beautiful to see this sort of sisterhood of women supporting other women, progressive women, really being in the fight with other progressive women. And, you know, Jessica Ramos had come out to a forum that we had hosted earlier in the year and said to our audience, you know, I wouldn't be in office if it weren't for Amplify Her.
What a wonderful thing.
That was amazing. No, I think we were all kind of tearing
That's
up
great.
because...
Well, you know, it's very noble, and I'm so glad you're doing it. And I love the energy, and I think the future looks so much better with women like you. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.